What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of my R&B review. This is your boy Reg here, and today is going to be a kind of a special episode today because I'm not only reviewing one but two albums today, and those albums are the first album being the Ohio Players with the Climax album, released in 1974, and also I am going to review the other album, Fire, released also released in 1974 and shit. This album cover right here for y'all. A little disclaimer. I do have the album. I do have the album, but I misplaced it somewhere and shit like that. And yeah, I think I misplaced it somewhere, but other than that, yeah, so 1974 was pretty much like a busy year for the Ohio Players, to be exact. Um, yeah, because like they was signed to Mercury Records and stuff like that. Skin Tight was like a huge it was like a huge hit for them and shit like that. And around that time too, the Ohio Players, had some new members and shit like that. Billy Beck became, the keyboardist Billy Beck came, and Jimmy Diamond Williams also went on doing drums too and shit like that. So, and this is pretty much like one of the popular lineups too and stuff like that. So, just to let everybody know. Now, I want to talk about Climax first because that was like the first album that was released. Um, Interesting thing about the Climax album. Ironically, this was not released on Mercury Records because this is actually released on Westbound Records. And so the Ohio Players really pretty much recorded like a lot of material for Westbound Records and shit like that. And once they went to Mercury Records, pretty much Westbound kind of felt some type of way, and I think like they pretty much released this album like without this album without like the Ohio Players like content and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? And so, if you look at the album cover, very dope album cover, but look closely, you see like this chick, stabbing this motherfucker in the back and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? And so, I was reading about this album, and it was kind of like an urban legend that, it was an urban legend that Westbound kind of did that because they felt the Ohio Players stabbed them in the back, basically, when they went to Murray Records and shit like that. Very interesting and stuff like that. It's kind of like an urban legend, but yeah. And so with this album is kind of comprised of 8 songs, and 3 of the songs were from like previous released albums and shit like that. And I believe those songs are Sleep Talk, Food Stamps, Y'all, and Players Ballin'. Which I think those songs were like from like the some XD album, Pain album, I think, and shit like that. So yeah, give me one quick second. Yeah, I thought I was skipping for a minute, but yeah. So other than that, so yeah, I'm not gonna talk about those songs actually, because I'm gonna wait till I actually get those albums to pretty much talk about those songs. But I am gonna talk about the rest of the songs and shit like that, because like most of these songs from this album, it kind of has like some cover songs and shit like that. It kind of has some cover songs and shit like that. And so yeah, we're gonna talk about everything on this shit. So basically, track number 2, Ruffle Foot. Yeah, that was an alright kind of track and shit. You know what I'm saying? Track number 3, we got Proud Mary, which Proud Mary is the cover song of the Creedence Clearwater Revival track and shit like Creedence Clearwater Revival. But the most famous version is the Ike and Tina version and shit like that. So, cause everyone knows that version pretty much and shit. And so this one is pretty much a little funkier and stuff like that, a little funkier and shit. But again, like pretty solid cover. Um, Track number 4, we got is Climax. Man, I fucking love this song and shit. Very dope track. Love the soulfulness in this whole fucking song and shit. And then track number 5, we got is What's Going On, which is, of course, the cover of the Marvin Gaye track and shit like that. You know. Give me one second. Sorry about that. But yeah, like the cover of the Marvin Gaye version and shit like that, which I shouldn't have to tell y'all how important that album song is and shit. Yeah, this is pretty much my favorite song off this album. Pretty much because the fact that they took like a different approach with it, made it like a lot more jazzier in a weird way. Um, I love the outro, like like that shit, and I love the fact that Pete Rock, he used that. All my Pete Rock and CL Smooth fans should definitely know about that sample and shit like that. Y'all should definitely know about that shit. That's all I'm gonna say. So yeah, what's going on? Definitely a very good cover and shit. And the final song I'm gonna talk about is "Pack It Up," which yeah, "Pack It Up" was okay. Not really too big on that song. So overall, pretty much the whole Climax album is pretty much just some throwaways and shit like that. Nothing really spectacular, but I would recommend this if you were really diehard Ohio players heads. And it's kind of interesting because in 1975, I just recently found out that Westbound actually released one of their unreleased albums, Rattlesnake, which I recently found out. I didn't even know the album existed until I found it in the vinyl store and shit. So I'm definitely gonna check it out for my personal taste and shit. And so yeah, this is the fucking Climax album, 1974. This album is out of print, so if you guys can find this album, like don't be hesitant to get it. It's kind of pricey a little bit too. I kind of saw it high in price, but if you want to find it on vinyl, you should pretty much get it on a reasonable price and shit. So, Ohio Players Climax 1974. All right, so after the Climax, we're gonna get into the Fire album, which, man, Fire, very, 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 very interesting album and shit, cause this was released after the whole Skin Tight, and so yeah, pretty much, nothing to it. They just quickly, recorded this album and shit. Getting very sexy chick on the album cover, kind of like a fucking firefighter and shit. I wish I could fucking find that album. I don't know where it is, but yeah. And this is the one that was released on Mercury Records, by the way. And it came out with 2 singles, and those 2 singles are Fire and I Wanna Be Free. Yeah, man. Album has 8 songs. So yeah, we're gonna talk about this shit. Let's hit it. Track number 1 we got is Fire. This is pretty much one of their signature songs and shit, like next to Love Roller Coaster. This is pretty much like one of their signature songs. Love this shit right here. Definitely a very hot song, no pun intended. And it's kind of interesting too because they were recording this track and Stevie Wonder had came to the studio and he basically was like, told him that if they released this as a single, it would definitely have been a hit. And so, truth be told, definitely was a huge hit for them and shit. Definitely loved the instrumentation on this fucking song and stuff. You know what I'm saying? Very dope track, Fire. And you guys should definitely know this track too because it is the theme song to Hell's Kitchen. You know that show with I think Gordon Ramsay and shit. Crazy ass, crazy ass fucking cook and shit. That's all I'm gonna say. Yeah, I watch that show. I used to watch that show sometimes and stuff, but yeah, I'm not really too big on that. Track number 2, Together. Um, just a little disclaimer. The ballads, except for one particular ballad, I'm not really a fan of on this album. I just thought it was like a bit too. I don't know. It didn't really hit me as much as Skin Tight and the Honey album, which definitely going to talk about the Honey album and shit. Yeah, definitely going to talk about the Honey album. It didn't really hit me as hard as that. So, and that notion goes for the song Together too. To be real with you, yeah, like vocally, it was a cool song, but I didn't really care for it too much and shit. You know what I'm saying? Track number three we got is "Running from the Devil." Love this song. Very funky track. Um, it's kind of like talking about how one is always battling their demons and shit, and they never really face their problems head on. They always just pretty much they're running away from their problems, and it's not pretty much good to like run away from your problems and shit. So yeah, that's all I gotta say. Track number four we got is "I Want to Be Free." This is the ballad, pretty much the only ballad I love from this album. It's a fan favorite. A lot of people have sampled this song and shit like that. That shoot, shoot, shoot. Like I love that track and shit. Sugarfoot at his best, yo. Like I wanna be free to run and play. And not only Sugarfoot, but I felt like Diamond definitely did his thing on the drums too. Especially that drum intro. I love that drum intro in the beginning and shit like that, and in the breaks in between like the choruses and shit. So yeah, man. Okay. That's always the bad part about finding some of these rare vinyls. Always scratches and shit like that. But at least I got them. But other than that, yeah, the drumming on this fucking song is what really makes this shit, in my opinion. So I always feel like "I Want to Be Free" was definitely an exceptional song when it came to like that instrumentation. You know what I'm saying? And then ironically, we get to Smoke. Which Smoke again, very cool track, kind of keeps in contact with the concept with the fire theme and shit like that. What I got from Smoke is basically them kind of making fun of people who kind of smoke, cigarettes, weed, whatever, and shit like that. Um, Kind of like a comedic track and shit, very funky shit. Um, then we get to track number six. It's All Over. Yeah, and I kind of wish the song was over as soon as it started. But yeah, didn't really care for this track. Like I said, the ballads and the unofficial last track. What the hell? Pretty much that's my favorite song on this album. Again, like a very funky track. I love that. Da 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 da. And ironically, it's kind of like one of the rare political tracks that the Ohio players really have done, because with the Ohio players, they're not really like, compared to like Earth, Wind, and Fire and Parliament of Funkadelic, they're not really one to really have like a lot of conceptual songs like that. But because like when they go into the studio, they pretty much like to improvise and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? And so with What the Hell is pretty much a very interesting track, because it does talk about sign of the times and shit like that. War, the drug culture and shit. So I kind of felt that that was a very underrated track from them and stuff like that. And not a track I hear like a lot of Ohio players fans talk about. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. Then ends off with the Together Feelings reprise, which I didn't really care for this shit. I'm sorry. But yeah. So with the Fire album, it's a good album, don't get me wrong, but I kind of felt like it was not as good as, the Skin Tight album in comparison. And that's me personally, because I felt like the ballads were kind of, minus I Want to Be Free, were kind of a little weak on this album. But what really saved this album, I felt like the instrumentation was a lot more tighter when it came to the Fire album and shit. So that's one thing I can really say about the Ohio players that I fucking love and shit. Um, Very funky album and shit. Love this album. And yes, y'all, I'm definitely gonna do the Honey album, because that album right there, man. That's when the Ohio players were at their peak. But I'm gonna just get more into that one day and shit. I'm pretty much gonna probably do the Honey albums maybe sometime next month because I gotta get over, you know, reviewing the last two Rick James albums of the '80s and shit. So I've been putting this on hold for like a long time, and I gotta really get the ball rolling with this one. So I most likely will probably start doing that within the next 2 weeks. So I can't. I'll if I do it, I do it. So just stay tuned and be on the lookout for my channel. So yeah, that's fucking the Ohio players. Call this the class of '74 and shit like that. Must have it. Both albums must have in your collection if you can find it because I want to say like the Fire. I want to say I don't even know if it's in print or not. I feel like it's kind of hard to come by because a lot of the Ohio player stuff is very hard to come by depending on where you're at. So yeah. All right. So with that being said, stay tuned for more reviews stuff. Make sure y'all click that subscribe button. Peace.